Tell me like a Hellcat.
Hey folks, this isn't a gaming video or anything of the sorts, and yes, I am playing Elite Dangerous right now because, well, we're talking about space, and I just wanted to basically talk about some things that have been kind of getting important to me as a person. And I studied at university. Part of my degree was planetary geoscience, which is basically space geography. And I've always had a real passion for space as a thing. Now, as of December 15th, which was a couple of weeks ago now, SpaceX, the company owned by Elon Musk, of course Tesla, achieved something special. They completed the first flight and successful return landing of one of their Falcon 9 rockets, and of course the Dragon orbiter part of it. Now, that's incredible because first off, this Falcon 9 has already been to space once. So the December 15th launch was of a spacecraft that went to space, came back, landed, and was refurbished and went up again. Now that's the first time since the space shuttle era that we've seen that. And this is from a private company. Now of course there's Blue Dragon, there's other companies who are doing similar things. Most of them to low Earth orbit and to less, should we say, risky altitudes. SpaceX is delivering things into geosynchronous orbit and low Earth orbit rather than just edge of space. And that's exciting because this is something we're finally making almost normal. And their rockets are able to return and they land safely now. Yeah, they had teething troubles, but what development doesn't? The thing I find so exciting about this is what prospects this opens up. Now, Musk has talked about a wish to go to Mars, in fact, to colonize Mars by 2025. That is not long away. That's 7 years. Think about that. How old will you be in 7 years? And the prospect of a Mars colony is there. Is it realistic? Well, Elon Musk has a tendency to set some very, very tight goals for things. But he has money. And he has resources. And he's not beholden to a taxpayer like NASA was. So that's kind of exciting that he's achieving his goals he set with SpaceX, and we're seeing a return to spaceflight. Now, of course, President Trump from the US signed the decision to send men back to the moon with a view to going to Mars. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the movie The Martian and the spacecraft they used. Now, of course, recent tests with long-duration stays in zero gravity that NASA performed with the twin astronauts, I've now completely forgotten their names, I do apologise, but twin brothers, so very similar, oh god, ignore that, very similar physiology and, of course, genetics, showing major medical problems with long durations in zero gravity. Osteoporosis, major bone wastage, and of course high risks of exposure to things like cancers. Now of course that's inside of the Van Allen belt, so there is that, but what we'll experience on the way to Mars, who knows? Now, the exciting thing about what Musk is talking about, and I'm sure, like I said, if you've seen the film The Martian, and films like Interstellar, you saw they had rotating crew compartments. This is something you see in Elite Dangerous. This is what's called Coriolis in terms of its effect, the Coriolis effect, the spinning. And by the Coriolis effect, you generate a kind of gravity. Now, to simulate that, or to kind of put it into a relatable context, think about when you hold a bucket of water. Now, if you were to tip it upside down, the water would pour out and you would have a very wet floor. Spin the bucket. I'm sure everyone's done that as a kid. You know, you spin the bucket on the end of your arm, the water stays in the bucket. That's generating a form of gravity, and that's what these rotating rings around spacecraft or stations could do. They generate an element of artificial gravity. The bigger the ring, the more gravity, the more force it exerts. So you end up with a way of generating a form of gravity which can mitigate a lot of these effects. Is this the future of long-duration spaceflight? Well, people like Elon Musk think so. That's incredible that we are looking at ways of keeping people in space for a year or longer. It means we can go further. We know people can last these lengths of times. You know, there have been tests in the volcanic plains of Hawaii, out in the tundras of Russia, of groups of test subjects living in isolation inside buildings, like a colony on Mars, for example, which would entirely be internal apart from spacewalks, or surface walks, which would of course be in pressure suits. So you're in a situation here where you've got the makings of one of these trips. Does 7 years sound unrealistic now? Not really. Now you think about the SpaceX's latest development and their latest projection for the Falcon 20... that's another rock. The Falcon 20 Heavy, and its ability to lift up to 54 tons of payload. And that's the sort of thing it'll be using to build a Mars colonization vessel. Of course, that sort of ship will have to be built in orbit, and that sort of ship will really not land like the Martian. It'll be in orbit, it will travel to Mars, they'll send down a lander, and it'll come back. It'll be very similar to the Apollo missions in principle, in that you have a mothership with a crew that remains aboard, and you have a lander party. But the Martian, when actually reviewed by scientists and NASA engineers, especially the guys from the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who really are the eggheads of NASA, when they actually discussed these things, and they discussed the film The Martian, they said, apart from a couple of minor issues, it's not actually that far off reality. It's very, very close and scientifically faithful. So, could what I'm doing right now be something in the near future, within 10, 20, 30 years? Well, no, not a spacecraft like this, of course. This sort of technology, well, 10 years ago we thought would be impossible. Who knows where we'll be in 50 years, in 100 years? I'd like to think I'll still be around in 50, maybe 60, 70 years. Who knows with the way things are going in terms of medical technology, but where will we be as a species in 100 years? Look how far flight has come in 110 years. Flight's only been around since 1903, and you think about the progress even up until 2003. We'd already sent reusable shuttles to space and back. In 100 years' time, will we be flying spacecraft that don't need booster stages, spacecraft that don't need to be landed vertically, spacecraft that don't require the amount of command and control that current rocket technology requires them to have on the ground? NASA's mission control, for example. A spacecraft that doesn't need to be rebuilt between every flight. Could spaceflight become as routine as getting a low-budget airline ticket to Spain? It's plausible, isn't it? Oh, the big thing, of course, recently was NASA and its discussion of going back to the moon. And then you had Boeing actually throwing fun shade at SpaceX about wanting to go to Mars. And Boeing said, we'll race you. Elon Musk says, well, you're on. And that's going to hit again. Yeah, my atmospheric flight is a little bit weak right now. In fact, looking at this is 0.1 G, so I shouldn't be doing too badly, should I? But apparently I am. I'm taking things far too riskily. But when you've got companies like Boeing and Tesla competing, that's incredible. Corporate spaceflight, businesses who could make a profit from this technology, and a profit from the end results of this technology. And what would that be? Resources. Imagine if you could get the rights to mine from a separate planet. A mining colony. The features of sci-fi technology and sci-fi films could soon become an absolute reality for us. Think of the profits. Think of the fact we could protect Earth by not actually having to mine resources from Earth. Earth could become a protected place where humanity gets to live in a green and blue, beautiful environment. free from pollution, because we are no longer needing to dig it up and cut into its surface to exist. Think of the alloys we could create from minerals we find on other planets. Wouldn't humanity's future be endless? Obviously, at time of recording, this is before Christmas week, because I'm currently in Scotland when this video releases. But as this is the week of the holidays and New Year's just around the corner, think of where we are now. Think of where we're going to be. And think of what the future holds for us. This is fascinating, and I honestly cannot wait to see where we go. Maybe I'm not going to be around for that point, but you know what? I am so excited, and I hope you guys are too. So I do excuse the awful flying in this one, but I wanted to really talk about the subject. It's something I'm passionate about, and it's something I find exciting. Hopefully you found this kind of vlog, or e-log, interesting. Hope you all had a great holidays, and I'll see you soon. Bye.